Hey folks, in this video tutorial, I'm going to be walking you through and showing you how to prepare your tin canning lids so that you can reuse them a second time. Now, I know what you're thinking. Technically, that's an unsafe practice, and you're right. But I want to walk you through why I started reusing lids, why I only do it if I absolutely have to, and then also the technique I use to make sure that they seal well a second time. So let's dive into this. When I first started canning, I never reused my tin canning lids. Ever. I understood the manufacturer's claims that they're only good for one-time use. After that, you're going to have issues with seals failing and all that stuff. But in 2020, hello, we all know what that brought to us, spring of 2020, I could not find canning lids anywhere in my community. There was a serious canning lid shortage. Normally I will grab my lids either like late winter or early spring. I couldn't find them. And here in Canada, all our food preserving equipment, everything was on back orders and wait lists. And if you know anything about preserving food, you know it doesn't wait. It doesn't wait for shipments to come in. And being where we're at, sometimes we can't even get things shipped to us here. So I was suddenly in a very big dilemma. We preserve hundreds of jars of food every year. Yes, I have some reusable glass lids that I love, but they don't fit all my jars. And so suddenly I was faced with a dilemma. What were we gonna do? And so I started doing some sleuthing and talked to different people and even thought back on conversations I've had with friends who have mothers who can. What did they do when there was canning lid shortages? Especially my Canadian friends that lived in the northern part of the country where often companies won't even ship products to. So your only resource is what's at your local grocery or hardware store. And what I discovered was that it was very, very common for these women to reuse their tin canning lids. That's not to say it's a good idea necessarily, but it's a very common practice here in this country. Now, I tried using my tin canning lids that had been used once, tried running a batch through the canner, and they didn't have a great seal rate. Some of them let loose in storage when they were sitting on my pantry shelf, and so I knew there had to be a better way to deal with it. And the key problem is, after you have used your lid once, the seal, there's a rim, an indent of the jar's rim on your seal, and then you are working with a seal that's got bumps and ridges in it. Let me flip the camera around and show you what I'm talking about, and then I'll also show you a technique I found that helps smooth out the seal on a once used lid, and a technique that you can potentially benefit from if you are having canning lid shortages in your area as well. With your brand new canning lids, you're going to see the rubber seal on this, which actually this technically isn't rubber. I'm not sure what this is, a mix of paraffin and something else, I think. But the seal is smooth and even. This is why you get a great seal on your brand new lids, is because, hello, anywhere your jar's rim touches the surface, the seal is going to take. However, when you are dealing with used canning lids, you can see where the jar's rim has really pressed into this. The technique I found for reusing these softens the rubber and gives you a smooth, even surface. So I'm just going to show you. I've got a stack of used canning lids here. And you can see the rims are indented. Some of them are dirty. So I'm going to walk you through what I do though to flatten out the seal so that it takes better in the canner. The very first thing you need to do if you are planning to reuse your lids and prepare them using the technique I'm going to show you is you need to inspect your lids. Are they bent? Do they have, dents on the top? Is there still a good popping action on it? If your lids are blemished in any way, throw them out. So depending on how you open your jars of food, I'm going to show you a way to do it with minimal damage to the lid at the end of this video. But right now, I just want you to go through and sort your lids. If any of them are misshapen at all, check them. They're no good. You won't be able to tell if your jar is properly sealed or not if your lids are damaged. Now, the other thing I would also have you do is look on the underside where the white enamel part is. If this is scratched or worn through and there's metal showing, throw them out as well. Technically, the tin on these lids is not a food grade metal. You don't want that coming in contact with your food, and it will actually make things rust, which you don't want that in your food at all on your jars. So if the metal itself is messed up, or if the white finish underneath has been scratched, chuck your lids, all right? Once you've sorted through them all, then it's time to go wash them up. We're gonna put them in a pot, cover them with water, put them on the stove and boil them for 20 minutes. And then we're going to inspect the finish on them again. And then we will go from there and pick out the best. Now, one thing I forgot to point out is that you want to make sure when you are washing them that you specifically wash in the seal around the perimeter of your lid, just in case there's food or something stuck in there. It's very important that you get that out. All right, let's get these in a stock pot, cover them with water, and get them heating on the stove. They're just covered by about an inch or two of water. They're rubber side up, and that's how we do it. All right, while we're waiting for that water to come up to a simmering boil, I want to walk you through a few things really quickly, some of the risks associated with reusing your tin canning lids. So the first one is that manufacturers clearly state they're designed for one-time use. That's it. So you're using the product in a way it was never meant to be used if you reuse it a second time. So be aware of that. The next thing I want you to know is that often you are going to have your lids fail to seal in the canner. It's not uncommon to have one or two in a batch not seal when you are reusing your canning lids. Now, the technique I'm showing you with boiling your lids is going to cut back on that, but it is a risk, especially if you're processing your little jars of, let's say, little jams or jellies where you have, maybe a 10-minute processing time in the water bath canner. Those especially are going to be more likely to fail to seal, all right? Another issue you're going to have is your lids are going to look like they sealed in the canner, but once you actually set them on the shelf for a couple weeks, sometimes they will let loose. If that happens, you need to throw your food away. Often you will have something growing on the top, whether it's mold or some sort of yeast. Do not eat that food. Even if nothing is present, I would still recommend throwing it out if that lid has let loose. If you go to open your lid and there's not that suctioning sound, consider your food unsafe. Another thing I would like to point out is that I don't really ever reuse my tin canning lids in the pressure canner. With such long processing times, I don't want to take the risk of having one or two jars of that food not seal. So I am very adamant that my reused tin canning lids only go in the water bath canner and for foods that have a short processing time. We're coming up to a boil. Let me flip the camera around and just show you what's going on down here. I just want these lids to gently simmer. They don't need to be at a rolling boil. So I'm just going to knock my heat down a little bit and find a lid. We're just going to let those simmer and warm up for 20 minutes. So I got to set my timer over here. And we're going to let those go. All right, let's see what we've got. Pretty even looking. Let's just take this over to the sink. We're actually going to run cold water over these after we dump out the hot water. Just to chill them so we can handle them. And let's look at what we've got. Pretty nice. All right, let's dry these off and take a closer look at them. Now, not all of these are necessarily going to be suitable for reuse, but let's flip through them. And see what we got. All right, let's take a peek through. These are mostly dry. Let's sort through these. We'll inspect our seals. That one's pretty smooth. Relatively smooth. Most of these are actually looking pretty good. So these two, however, I don't like the look of these two. You can see it almost looks like the seal is wearing thin. You've got a really exaggerated lip on the outer edge here and a bit of an indent as well. These two I am actually going to throw out. We're not going to hang on to these. They don't pass the test. So this is what we've got, folks. A used seal. A used lid, a once boiled, once used lid, and then here is our completely never been used lid. Before I let you go, I want to show you how to remove your tin canning lids from jars of home canned food without damaging the lid. Because if you're going to do this and keep a little backup supply on hand of used lids, just in case you run out of your tin canning lids, you need to remove the lid with as little damage as possible. So here is how I recommend you do it. On your jars of home canned foods, your thread moves closer and closer to the rim of your jar as you twirl it around. And right here is where you're going to insert a butter knife, and you're just going to give it a twist to loosen the lid. And then you might have a little nick in the edge of your lid's rim, but you will not be damaging the surface or any other parts. So here it goes. Ooh. Perfect. I can lift my lid off, and all the damage that has been done is a tiny little nick. Whoa, see if I can get it to focus for me. A tiny little nick right there. This lid is pretty much perfect, unblemished as far as its structure goes. And so that's perfect. That's the way I recommend you open your jars of food if you are planning to try to reuse these a second time. All right, folks, there you have it. I hope that gave you a great overview of why you're not supposed to reuse canning lids, the risks associated with it if you do, issues you might encounter, and then also a technique that will give you a better seal rate if you do decide to reuse your lids. Now, it's something I recommend. Don't just watch this video, go do more research, decide if you are comfortable reusing your lids when it comes to you and your family and your home canned food. I think that's a personal decision everybody needs to come to, so I highly recommend you do that. You can feel free to subscribe, follow along if you like what you see. You can also find me over on my website, atraditionallife.com, where I teach more canning and traditional life skills over there.